Hey guys, going through the review, it looked like a lot of people either skipped this last part or tried it and really didn't know what they were doing. So I wanted to make sure you had a chance to see how to do those before the test if you wanted to take time to do that. So let's go through these real quickly. This says to find two radian solutions between 0 and 2 pi where the cosine or x is negative 1/2. So for 25, I'm literally just going to stare at the unit circle. So 0 to 2 pi is simply the entire circle, and it says to do radians, and then I'm looking for where the x would be negative 1/2. And if you look on your unit circle, the x is negative 1/2 here at 120 degrees and down here at 240 degrees. In both of those spots, the x coordinate or cosine is that negative 1/2 that they're looking for. But it does say radians. So when I look at my radians in those two places, I'm at 2 pi thirds and 4 pi thirds. Okay, 26. This is more like what we did in 4.4. It says the tangent's negative 6/5 and the cosine or x is less than 0. So this is the one where I need to do a triangle. I need to do Pythagorean theorem. And then I need to go ahead and answer what is the secant, what is asking? Cosecant. Okay. Keeping in mind that secant is the flipped over version of cosine, so hypotenuse over adjacent, and cosecant is the flipped over version of sine, so hypotenuse over opposite. So first I need a triangle. It says the tangent is negative 6/5. So that's my opposite over adjacent. Tangent is positive in quadrant 1, negative, positive, negative. So far, knowing the tangent has to be negative, I'm either in quadrant 2 or 4 with my triangle. But the second fact is that the cosine is less than 0 and therefore negative. So the cosine or x would be negative in quadrant 2. So these were the two quadrants that were options for my tangent to be negative. And then for my x to be negative would have been these two. So I'm looking for the quadrant where they overlap those two facts because it says and. So I'm going to draw my triangle into this quadrant. And then the opposite is 6 and the adjacent is 5. And then because it's negative, one of those numbers has to be negative. But in this case, the 5 would be the negative because your x is negative to get into that quadrant. So I finally got my triangle drawn. That's the hardest part. Now I'm going to do 6 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared to figure out what that hypotenuse is. Because I currently know opposite is 6, adjacent's negative 5, and I'm looking for that hypotenuse. Now I didn't use the negative because when you square it, negative goes away anyway. So I'm looking at this. So what's that going to add up to? 61. So my hypotenuse is actually going to be root 61. And it's ugly, but oh well. And so now I did my triangle, I did my Pythagorean. Now I can just answer the question. Since the secant wants hypotenuse over adjacent, that's root 61 over negative 5. Since cosecant wants hypotenuse over opposite, that's root 61 over 6. And I'm simply looking at the three values on my triangle to get that answer. How about in 27? 27 says that the tangent is 5/4. Okay, so now the tangent is positive, and then it says the cosine is greater than 0, and I'm looking for the secant. So look at these two pieces of information to get your quadrant. Again, tangent is going to be positive, in these two quadrants. And you can use your unit circle to help you with that. And then your cosine is going to be positive, keeping in mind that that is really saying you have a positive x value. Well, you know that positive x is on the right, so that would mean this quadrant or this one. So again, I need to draw my triangle into the quadrant that meets both conditions they gave you. So positive tangent, positive cosine, I'm in quadrant 1. Now tangent, opposite over adjacent. I always use the angle that's in by the origin. So opposite over adjacent, neither one is negative in that quadrant. Now I move on to finding that c or hypotenuse. So 16 plus 25, and so that's going to turn into 41. So C is root 41. And then secant again, think about that. It flips over the cosine, so hypotenuse over adjacent. So root 41 over 4, because looking at my triangle, this would be opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. Oops, sorry. All right then, what about 28? Find the value of sine when the cotangent is undefined. Where did I go? So the cotangent is undefined. That's kind of tricky. I'll have to think about that. And then what's my other condition? And I'm between a half and 3 pi halves. Okay, well, so a half pi is at the top, 3 pi halves is on the bottom. So by that, I have to be over here. Where is the cotangent undefined? Well, the only way that that will be undefined is if the bottom number is 0. Well, the only 0 coordinate I have between pi halves and 3 pi halves is right here, where it's -1, 0. Cotangent, remember, is the opposite or reciprocal of tangent, so it's going to be the x over the y, which would be -1 over 0. So they are talking about this spot. That is a place where the cotangent's undefined in between pi halves and 3 pi halves. So they're talking about this spot. And then what is it asking me to do in 28? Find the value of sine. Okay, so now I can't draw a triangle because it's right on one of the axes, but the sine is the y value and the y value is 0. So that one's more just a thinking process, and it's a little tricky as a result because it doesn't give you what you need for a triangle. And let's do this last one. I'm looking for the cotangent. Cosine is -3/5. So I know a couple of things. I know that my x is negative, so that's going to put me in one of these two quadrants to have a negative x or cosine. And then what else? Sine is greater than 0. Okay, well, if the sine is greater than 0, that means I have a positive y. So in which of these quadrants do I have a positive y? Well, that's going to have to be up here. So that's the triangle I'm going to be using. Cosine, remember, is adjacent over hypotenuse. So my adjacent side is 3, my hypotenuse is 5. The 3 has to be the one that has the negative. And then when I go to find this y value, it's going to be a positive because I'm in that quadrant. It told me my y or sine was positive. So 3 squared plus y squared equals 5 squared will lead me to a y value of 4. So now as I think about opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, what are they asking me for? The cotangent. Okay, so the cotangent is a flipped over version of the tangent. So since tangent's opposite over adjacent, this will be adjacent over opposite. So looking at my triangle, adjacent is -3, opposite is 4. So that is my value. So hopefully that helps you with those because there are a couple on the test and I want you to feel more confident. Have a great day, guys. Bye.